Let me try to summarize GCEL's HumaWealth program by talking very briefly about two things. What is this about, and what does it mean for Africa? I've spent my career as an economist. I spent 25 years in the Federal Reserve System, watching the macroeconomy and the global economy. I've been very involved in regional economic development issues. I had the honor of serving as chair of the OECD's Territorial Development Policy Committee for 4 years. As an economist, and I suspect there are other economists in the room here this morning, we know that the most powerful and durable engine of economic growth is trade. And at this critical moment in the globe's economic history, when we must go beyond the global financial crisis, we know that we cannot pay off all of that debt and have the kind of sustained, inclusive growth that all countries around the world want unless we find a way to trigger sustained, strong economic growth. Trade is going to be the engine of that growth. The reality is, and what many people don't realize, is that global trade today is massively inefficient. A typical product today, as shown in our video, when it moves around the world, passes through the hands of 30 different companies, from shelf to shelf. Some 75% of the time, the information associated with that shipment, when it changes hands from one company to the next, changes hands in the form of paper. Now, what that means is that global trade is exactly where the airline industry was 25 years ago, when to get on an airplane you had to have a paper ticket. And you had to have a paper ticket because each airline had its own reservation system, but they didn't talk to each other. And that is precisely where global trade is today. Global trade today, each company along the way of a product moving through international trade has their own information system, but they don't talk to each other. Now, this seems amazing to us in a 21st century world when we are accustomed to using the internet. But it is because we have vertical investments in what is exactly a horizontal process. GCEL is a Swiss-based, nonprofit, public-private partnership that has come together to solve this problem and to create the world's first digital trade platform. This platform will do for global trade what Sabre did for the global airline industry. Sabre created the world's first global horizontal airline reservation system. And because of that innovation, you can now go on Orbitz or Expedia or Kayak or any number of other airline reservation systems, and you, the consumer, have all of that information at your fingertips. What we are doing is to create exactly the same power of innovation in global trade. Now, to give you some sense of how inefficient global trade really is today, that inefficiency adds up to about $700 billion. It costs our planet $700 billion a year to be exchanging information in the form of paper instead of digitally. Now, to solve this problem requires more than just technology. It does require technology. Sabre's solution was founded on technology. But to solve the global trade inefficiency takes technology, but it takes something else. And that is why GCEL is a Swiss-based nonprofit public-private partnership. It takes the public sector, which wants to have the problem solved but doesn't have the capacity to do so. It takes the private sector, which has the capacity, but no country in the world will entrust their trade to one company or one country, because trade is all about national security, national sovereignty. So GCEL is a coalition, And in fact, as you saw in our video, we will have 28 companies around the world, 7 of which will be in the Middle East and Africa, deploying the soft infrastructure required to build this digital platform for trade. So it takes technology, but it also takes a globally balanced solution in which all countries, all regions of the world are part of the solution. And that's why it's never been done before. What does this have to say about Africa? Let me very quickly focus on 3 major benefits to Africa from our program, which we call HumaWealth, which will deploy the soft infrastructure to create this digital platform for trade. Let me focus on 3 impacts. Number 1, HumaWealth will expand your trade. Africans have been traders for millennia, from the Phoenicians of North Africa to those who journeyed across the Indian Ocean from Africa. And that trading spirit can really do it again in terms of creating your economic future. In fact, this continent is in desperate need of significant economic rebalancing. You need to expand the factories you already have, you need to build new ones, and above all, you need to create a lot of jobs in the process. And you have the youthful population to drive and sustain that growth. And by creating those jobs, you also will create a huge consumer marketplace that many other economies around the world want to be a part of. Meanwhile, many of your neighbors are in the process of restructuring huge amounts of debt, and one need only look at the Eurozone debt crisis, the Greek debt crisis, to see the evidence of that. But Europe has also built up a huge trade deficit with China that runs to almost 170 billion euros a year. And this is a lost opportunity for Europe that cannot continue. And despite its aging population, Europe still has enormous buying power. And thus, they want to see growth in Africa to sell their high-value products and services. And you want to grow your trade with Europe and other high-income countries to expand your industrial capacity. What is needed to trigger this economic rebalancing? Well, buyers in Europe, in the United States, in other parts of the country must be confident that African businesses are both efficient and transparent. And to do that, African businesses need digital tools to create efficiency and transparency. HumaWealth offers these tools. Our digital trade platform is not purely about making information sharing more efficient. It's also about putting digital tools in the hands of businesses to let them run their businesses at optimal peak efficiency. The analysis that we have done, and which is in the document the green document that you saw at the door, in collaboration with the Arab League and the African Union, shows that HumaWealth can expand trade in the Europe, Middle East, Africa region by $389 billion per year. And that amounts to another $266 billion of exports for the Middle East and Africa region alone. $266 billion of exports for the Middle East Africa region. And by being among the first to deploy this system globally, Africa can share significantly in this trade increase. Second major benefit of HumaWealth for Africa. HumaWealth will help Africa create new jobs. The custodians of the global economy agree that expanding trade is the strongest engine of job creation. And as African factories fill more orders, they will start hiring. They will also start purchasing more support services that they need from service companies, who in turn will hire more workers. The factory owners will also buy more inputs, putting even more Africans to work. And all of these direct and indirect effects add up to a virtuous cycle that feeds on itself. But HumaWealth will add even more jobs than just those that come from expanding your industrial capacity. The soft infrastructure that you heard about in the video will be deployed by firms right here in Africa. If your finance, your insurance, and your technology firms seize this opportunity, which I hope they will. And these service industries that deploy the soft infrastructure for this global digital platform, they represent the opportunity for very high-pay service jobs and the very types of jobs that your highly educated young people aspire to hold. In all, when you add up all of the jobs that can be created through industrial expansion and through the service sector which deploys the soft infrastructure, this adds up to 32 million jobs across the Africa, Middle East region. 32 million jobs. And just to give you a sense, it's roughly 18 million in manufacturing and 14 million in the service sector. My point is, by going first, Africa can lay claim to your share of those jobs. Now, there's a third very important benefit to Africa from HumaWealth that I also want to talk about, and that is the HumaWealth program makes African SMEs more prosperous. As you saw in our video, the digital trade platform will be available to every African business at no cost to them. Let me make a very quick analogy. If you have internet access, you can go on Orbitz, Expedia, or Kayak and book your own airline ticket. That costs you nothing. You don't have to pay a travel agent. In the same way, we will create a digital platform with a web portal access through the internet that will allow every African business, whether you are a farmer, whether you are a manufacturer, you will have access to all of the digital tools in this system at no cost. This means that every African business gains access to a suite, a powerful suite of digital business tools that is otherwise beyond their reach. Today, the only African companies that can afford to buy these tools are the big multinational companies. We are going to put this same set of digital tools in the hands of every African business at zero cost. Now, these tools will help them do a lot of things, but I want to stress three in particular. Number one, it will cut the costs of production at African SMEs. The tools in our system, which we call the Global Logistics System, or GLS, will allow SMEs to manage their purchasing, manage their operations, manage their shipping, and all of this means that they will reduce their unit operating costs by more than 15%. Our system has been tested and proven in the world's most sophisticated manufacturing industry, the automotive industry. Ford Motor Company cut their unit operating costs by an average of 15%. Most African SMEs have unit costs that are much higher than Ford Motor Company. So the savings to an African SME, in our opinion, will be much greater than 15%, perhaps running up to 20 or 25%. And this, of course, is very important in African SMEs being competitive in global markets. The second thing these digital tools will do, they will help connect SMEs with global buyers. Every SME in Africa, if it wants to grow, must at some point go global. But how do they put their products under the eyes of global buyers? Our system will provide the tools to put their products under the eyes of those buyers who are not only interested, but are buying those products right now. Moreover, by giving the information in real time about how the African SME has performed in the past, it will convince those buyers to have the confidence to not just look, but to buy. And the third thing, and perhaps the one that is most important of all, is that it will help African SMEs get the financing, the capital they need to grow their business. To put it very simply, our system provides a real-time, comprehensive financial snapshot of the business's financial situation, knowing where all of the input orders are, where all of the production is, and where all of the shipments and the receipt of the payment for all those shipments. All of that information is available in a real-time snapshot. Moreover, the information is corroborated not by the business themselves, but by everyone in the supply chain with whom they do business. With that kind of real-time, validated information, you just made your African SME more bankable. And capital is always the critical challenge that most SMEs face, and for that reason, this system, we believe, offers enormous benefits, and in fact, that is exactly why the world's largest association of development banks, ADFIAP, is one of our strategic partners around the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, I'm going to stop at that point. Let me just say that we are very excited about our partnership with the African Union, and we look forward to exploring how we can ensure that Africa seizes these benefits and becomes a benchmark for trade efficiency around the world.